All right, guys, here is the rest of the story. Okay, so we're going to start around line 75. Okay, we left off where Max said, "Don't worry, I have my compass." "North is that way," he said, pointing in the direction we had been going. Horse said, "You sure?" "A scout compass never lies," Max insisted. "We lied," I reminded him. "Yeah, but this is an official scout compass," Max returned loyally. "Come on," Max said, and marched forward. Horse and I followed. In moments, we crossed a metal bar on the walkway. On one side, a sign proclaimed New York. On the other, it said New Jersey. So they made it to both places. "Holy smoke," Horse said with a reference as he straddled the bar. "Talk about being tough. We're in two states at the same time." So that's pretty awesome. "It began to rain," Max said. "Maybe it'll keep us clean." That's funny because remember, they were like refugees. They were really nasty and looking rough. And he's like, "Okay, maybe the rain will make us a little clean." "You saying I'm not clean?" Horse shot back. So again, Horse, who's like wicked defensive, still being defensive, doing that. "Ever friendly," I put up my umbrella. And that's really interesting that it says ever friendly, I put up my umbrella. I think like someone was saying, the narrator, the boy, is like always helping out his friends, even though we have Horse, who's kind of like a jerk, always being defensive and having something rude or negative to say. This narrator, this boy, is still holding up the umbrella for his friends, keeping them dry. We went on, Max on one side, Horse on the other, me in the middle, trying to avoid the growing puddles. After a while, Max said, "Would you move the umbrella? Rain is coming down my neck." "We're supposed to be roughing it," I said. "Being in the middle isn't roughing it," Horse reminded me. I folded the umbrella up so we could all get soaked equally. "Hey," I cried, "look," staring up ahead. We could make out toll booths in the dim outlines of buildings. "Last one off the bridge is a rotten egg," Horse shouted and began to run. The next second, he tripped off and took off like an F-36 fighter plane. Unfortunately, he landed like a Hellcat dive bomber as his mattress unspooled before him and slammed into a big puddle. Uh-oh. So Horse's mattress is all wet. It's in a puddle now. I guess that's what he gets for being so rude. Max and I ran to help. Horse was damp. His mattress was soaked. When he tried to roll it up, water cascaded like Niagara Falls. "Better leave it," Max said. "It's what I sleep on at home," Horse said as he slung the soaking, dripping mass over his shoulder. When we got off the bridge, we were in a small plaza. To the left of the roadway, full of roaring cars. In front of us, a side of the highway, there was nothing but buildings. Only to the right there were trees. "North is that way," Max said, pointing toward the trees. We set off. "How come you're limping?" Horse asked me. My foot was killing me. So, the narrator, the boy, his foot was in so much pain. He is becoming tough, okay? Because he keeps going. First he was scared, afraid, nervous, but he's in pain, and he keeps going. So he's becoming a tough guy, okay? All I said though was, "How come you keep rubbing your arm?" "I'm keeping the blood moving." We approached the grove of trees. "Wow," Horse exclaimed. "Country." But as we drew closer, what we found were discarded cans, bottles, and newspapers. Old mattress spring. "Hey," Max cried, sounding relieved. "This is just like Brooklyn." I said, "Let's find a decent place, make camp, and eat." It was hard to find a campsite that didn't have junk. So it's not like the country they were expecting. They're in, New York, New Jersey, like the city. So it's not like country camp where it's like woods and nice and trees and peaceful. It's kind of dirty and like all kinds of cans and bottles and newspapers, but they're still going. The growing dark didn't help. We had to settle for the place that had the least amount of garbage. Max said, if we build a lean-to, it'll keep us out of the rain. He and Horse went a short distance with the hatchet. Seeing a tree they wanted, Max whacked it. The hatchet bounced right out of his hand. There was not even a dent in the tree. Horse retrieved the hatchet and checked the blade. Dull, he said. I think I'm going to carry something sharp and cut myself, Max protested. They contented themselves with picking up branches. I went in search of firewood, but everything was wet. When I finally gathered some twigs and tried to light them, the only thing that burned was my fingers. Meanwhile, Horse and Max used their branches to build a lean-to directly over me. After many collapses, which didn't help my work, they finally got the branches to stand in a shaky sort of way. Uh-oh, Horse said. We forgot to bring something for a cover. Max eyed me. Did you say you brought a blanket? No way, I cried. All in favor of using the blanket. Horse and Max both cried. Aye. So, there's a blanket now. Only after I built up a mound of partially burned matchsticks and lit them, I did get a fire going. It proved that where there's smoke, there doesn't have to be much fire. The guys, meanwhile, draped my blanket over their branch construction. It collapsed twice. About an hour after our arrival, the three of us were gathered inside the tiny space. There was a small fire, but more light came from my flickering flashlight. No more rain, Horse said with pride. Just smoke, I said, rubbing my stinging eyes. We need a vent hole, Horse pointed out. I could cut it with the hatchet, Max said. It's my mother's favorite blanket. And you took it? Max said. I nodded. You are tough, Horse said. So this boy, the narrator, found a blanket for all three of them that they can use together. So how kind, how thoughtful, how friendly. But now they're referring to him as tough because he took it from his mom, probably without permission. So feelings are changing. Besides having too much smoke in our eyes and being wet, tired, and in pain, we were starving. I almost said something about giving up, but as far as I could see, the other guys were still tough. Max put his frying pan atop my smothering smoke. After dumping the entire contents of his mustard bottle, he threw in the franks, like the hot dogs. Meanwhile, I bolted down my last sandwich. What am I going to eat? Horse suddenly said. Your beans, I reminded him. Max offered up his hatchet. Here, just chop off the top end of the can. Oh, right, Horse said. He selected a can, set it in front of him, levered himself onto his knees, then swung down, hard. There was an explosion. For a stunned moment, we just sat there, hands, face, and clothing dripping with beans. Suddenly, Max shouted, food fight, and began to paw the stuff off and fling it around. So, they're having fun now, okay? So, Max was kind enough to lend Horse the hatchet so he could open up his cans and eat. So maybe Horse's feelings are changing too, because first, he has the blanket from the boy, his friend, and now he got the hatchet from Max. So maybe he's going to let his guard down a little bit and not be so rude. Having a food fight in the cafeteria is one thing. Having one in the middle of a soaking wet lean-to with cold beans during a dark, wet New Jersey night is another. In seconds, the lean-to was down. The fire kicked over, and Max's frankfurters dumped on the ground. The food! Max screamed and began to snatch up the franks. Coated with mustard, dirt, grass, and leaves, they looked positively prehistoric. Still, we wiped the franks clean on our pants and then ate them. The franks, that is. Afterwards, we picked beans off each other's clothes, the way monkeys help friends get rid of lice. It's gross, but they're hungry. For dessert, Max shared some Tootsie Rolls. After Horse swallowed his 16th piece, he announced, I don't feel so good. The thought of his getting sick was too much. Let's go home, I said, ashamed to look at the others. To my surprise and relief, nobody objected. Wet and cold, our way lit by my fast fading flashlight, we gathered our belongings, most of them anyway. As we made our way back over the bridge, gusts of wind-blown rain plummeled until I felt like a used up punching bag. By the time we got to the subway station, my legs were melting fast. The other guys looked bad too. Other riders moved away from us. One of them murmured, "Juvenile delinquents." So they're still looking like horrible at this point, Rain, beans everywhere, nasty, dirty, hot dogs, mustard. Okay. To cheer us up, I got out my comic books, but they had congealed into a lump of red, white, and blue plump. With the subways running slow, it took us hours to get home. When we emerged from the High Street station, it was close to midnight. Before we split up to go to our homes, we just stood there on a street corner, embarrassed, trying to figure out how to end the day gracefully. I was the one who said, "Okay, I admit it. I'm not as tough as you guys. I gave up first." So it's a good point. They're all feeling defeated at this point. Okay. They're all feeling defeated. They're dirty. They're tired. You know, they tried camping, but they are defeated. They are done. They tried, but they're home and they don't know what to say to each other. And then the boys like, "I'm sorry, this is my fault. You know, my fault." But then Max shook his head. "Okay, it's my fault, I gave up first." But then Max says, "No, I wanted to quit, but I wasn't tough enough to do it." He looked to Horse. And then Horse made a fist. "You saying I'm the one who's tough?" he demanded. "I hate roughing it." So Horse is still being defensive, but he's starting to tell the truth a little bit. So Max was like, "Oh, I wanted to quit, but I didn't want to be the first one to say it." But then Horse was like, "I hated it too. I hated doing this." And then the narrator says, "Me too." "Same for me," Max said. Horse said, "The only thing is, we just have to promise not to tell Mr. Brinkman." Grinning with relief, we simultaneously clasped hands. "No matter what," Max reminded us, to which I added, "Scout's honor." So, throughout all of this, they still remain true to themselves, and they're not going to tell the Scoutmaster that they quit their camping trip. But in reality, I think they still did a good job, and they still went camping, and they still tried. And I think it made all of them closer and maybe had their attitudes changed a little bit. So, thinking back about this, and thinking back about the story, and thinking about the comprehension questions you're going to answer after this, um, what are your thoughts about the book, or the story? What are you guys thinking about it? And if you were one of the three people, narrator, the boy, Philip the horse, or Max, who would you be and why? Okay, so those are some things I'm going to be looking for when we come back to class at 11:30.